All right. Yeah, so my name's Ben. Nice to meet you. I'm a director here at Studio Yatta. This is a quick little intro if you're not aware of who we are or if we never spoke before. We're a motion studio specializing in art direction and animation, kind of span 3D, 2D, character, a whole range of motion graphics. We kind of kicked off in lockdown in 2021, which seems weird and abstract now compared to kicking things off in a bedroom a few years back. Yeah, I haven't spent like a previous kind of career in websites and designing apps and kind of static graphic design. Studio Yatta was born out of a hobby and something I really love doing, and I'll get to work with some really cool people and do it every day. And this is the team. We're a really small crew. There's just 4 of us in here. There's myself, there's Alice, producer, and there's Jordan and Rosie, who are motion designers. And I guess we're all kind of jack of all trades in terms of illustration, 3D, motion graphics. But yeah, that's the crew. It's a really tight-knit bunch, and we're very lucky to have each other. So Curriculum for Life. So we were approached by Curriculum, and they are a charity offering an open source resource of learner materials that can be embedded in schools alongside the kind of the standard curriculum. And they're kind of teaching things like encouraging self-esteem, learning about empathy, encouraging leadership and resilience, and aiming to equip young people with kind of a broader range of skills that when they leave school, they're equipped for, as they kind of put here, positive relationships with themselves, others, and the planet. So they approached us with a brief to create a 90-second explainer video capturing their mission, vision, and purpose, with a caveat that they had very little budget. And I think, we love when we can to work with charities and do our bit to give back. But it obviously begs the question when these kind of briefs come in: can we afford to do this? Do we want to do this? How's the general studio schedule looking? But also, if we are doing something that's for a charity or for extremely low profit, because we are a business, kind of selfishly, what are we getting out of it? Can we play? Can we learn new skills? Can we have loads of fun? And do we have kind of creative license for to do what we want? And this kind of ticked all the boxes. We're very lucky. The brand guidelines we provided were 6 pages long. 2 of those pages were the title page and the contents. So, I mean, we had colors, some free fonts, and a logo to play with. I think some people would find this intimidating, but we just thought it was a license to play and explore and have a bit of freedom. They also provided a script. So the read time that they gave us was 70 seconds, which again shaves 20 seconds off what we budgeted for, which is great if we're working on to a strict budget. And yeah, it was a really good script. I think sometimes we often kind of get given scripts and then we go to work with copywriters to refine them. But someone at Curriculum absolutely smashed creative language in school, because what they gave us was perfect. Hardly any changes at all. They also, and this is a first, and it hasn't happened before, hasn't happened since, they gave us some storyboards. I think they created on a tool called Animaker, which I believe is a cross between clip art and it's a storyboarding tool. I think, again, it's could be easy to kind of turn your nose up at this kind of thing, but if anything, it just kind of helped us understand where they're coming from, where they kind of see these metaphors going, and how they'd visually tell their story themselves. And I think can take it all with a pinch of salt, but kind of helps to get us aligned with how they see this moving and how they see the kind of the narrative flowing through. But yeah, this was a first and hasn't happened since. So when we get a brief like this, first thing we obviously do is work up a proposal. So these are generally just really simple documents, us outlining a very simplified version of their brief, just making sure we're both on the same page. Our approach, we 99% of the time don't provide any creative in terms of when we're pitching for work or providing proposals. I think we tend not to work for free. We don't like to kind of pour our energy and time into something we might not win. I think what we prefer to do is just bunch together a bunch of inspiration and animations that we love or can inspire the client in thinking, right, that's the direction we want to head. This is the kind of world we want to exist in. And yeah, it just saves us all time and yeah, saves us working for free, which we don't promote. And then working up a timeline and a budget, which we kind of skipped for this one, as like we say, it was the bare minimum and kind of agreed up front. In terms of the images and the inspiration that we shared with them, again, like I said, if we've got creative license, let's go wild. And we had this awesome color palette of kind of pinks and purples and oranges to play with. So we pulled together stuff that we wanted to play with and that we wanted to create. Very big emphasis on these massive eyes, which we'll come back to in a sec, which yeah, we were keen to kind of inject into the animation. Some hand-drawn elements as well, if we're talking about a curriculum and kind of being hands-on in the environment with the kind of lessons and stuff that they teach. Can we bring in kind of hand-drawn elements into scribbles and the textures on the door, and how can we work these in to the artwork? And finally, in terms of the backgrounds and the environments, what can we do with bare minimum of budgets, and what can we make look fun and poppy whilst being quite quick and sketchy to create? Yeah, and then I think we do this with most of our clients, is just quickly run through the process and just include this in the proposal as well. I think it's always easy to forget that not everyone's doing this every week, and as simple and as obvious as it might be, if you're in this industry, it's not for everyone, especially a charity who perhaps hasn't created an animation like this before. From working up style frames to kind of set the visual direction, to then storyboarding, to creating the static artwork, making sure we're all on board with the compositions, and then working through to animation and the sound mix at the end. So the style frames. Yeah, I guess we had this crazy palette from them to play with. So the first thing we do is kind of start working at compositions, exploring whether we need to add a couple of lighter shades or darker shades or neutrals to the palette, seeing what background colors work in these brand colors, and what clashes and what doesn't work, and what starts to feel a little bit childish perhaps rather than childlike. But yeah, like I say, we had a really fun palette to play with, so it was an absolute pleasure to do this initial kind of sketching. And with the characters, like I said, I think we really wanted to pull in these massive, wide, big eyes. So we're kind of keen to throw in a bit of Astro Boy feel to this, and also kind of figuring out skin tones. How do we show diversity when we've got blue, purple, orange to work with? And again, what feels realistic, what feels playful, what feels a bit too far out. And we start to kind of find a female character that we're happy with, a non-binary, and a male character who are going to be our kind of our key feature characters throughout the animation. Starting to figure out shapes, really loosely kind of sketching the silhouettes, and yeah, finding kind of proportions. I think at the start we really liked the big eyes, it's really big, bulky feet, kind of exaggerating the ends of the sleeves, and kind of big chunky fingers. And this is kind of where we wanted to take it before we'll get back to the feedback on this. We end up with our range of characters, which look a little bit like this. And started to play with textures. I think this is some early sketches of just adding a little bit of that kind of hand-drawn aesthetic to it, and seeing what worked, whether a big scribble across a character looked silly or whether it looked playful, whether this would then be animated or static. So what we provided in terms of style frames is more or less something like this, which we were stoked on. I think we were really happy. I think we had a lot of license to play. We had a fun color palette, and yeah, trying to squeeze these big eyes in. So feedback. These look like aliens. I don't like our brand colors, and the eyes are way too big. So it wasn't exactly a home run with the first kind of stab. So what we decided to do was park that for the time being, move on to the storyboards, and then once we've got a better idea of the content we're going to be playing with, starting to kind of attack, we'll go for round 2 within the artworking phase, taking all that on board and perhaps ditching the alien big eyes. So yeah, storyboards is just a chance for us to kind of sequence out the whole film, make sure we understand what content we're showing with each line and how the transitions work and how the whole thing kind of flows together. We use boards, which I don't know if anyone's familiar with, but it's a really good kind of storyboarding tool. It was actually created by the team at Animate, who I imagine have been using like InDesign or Illustrator, sending over PDFs for a long while before it gets quite frustrating to make amends and edit. So yeah, I guess they create boards, and it's a tool we use every day. It's really easy to kind of throw in images, rearrange, which if you're doing this in like InDesign or Illustrator, as soon as you take out one frame and have to nudge everything along, it's tedious and horrible, and this takes the pain out of that process. Client can also feedback directly onto the frames here, can throw comments and etc. So I highly recommend boards if anyone's kind of working with storyboards. We kind of start off with sharing learning and wisdom for education. It's one of humanity's greatest achievements. And as we showed in that style frame, we want kind of a collection of these learning metaphors and symbols. We then kind of move into a line about education systems struggling to adapt to the speed of change. So we kind of have this archaic kind of Greek building which crumbles, and up from behind there is this kind of modern city with an emphasis on kind of green areas and renewable energy as very kind of green focused syllabus. We transition up into the sky, and we have a character step out. This is a little line about them being young people being confused and this kind of unable to perhaps navigate the rapidly changing world they face when they're in school. I guess as we're kind of plotting through here, and we know we're working to a strict budget, each of these transitions and animations, we're thinking, okay, what can we do in the time that we have? And we'll come back to this stepping through the bush animation in a little bit, but definitely one thing we wanted to have a little bit to play with, but was perhaps a bit of cell animation or frame by frame that might be a bit time consuming. Yeah, and then we kind of move into this range of icons, which the logo was a diamond, so we tried to bring in a few hexagons into the artwork where we could, explaining about the kind of toolkits and the learning, the programs that we're kind of able to build with the Curriculum for Life scheme. Move into a kind of a scene where we're building our own and kind of piecing together jigsaw pieces so we can kind of customize and then adapt the learning materials. Move into sorry, I'm always I'll whisk through the rest of this. I understand that this isn't the most exciting bit. We want to talk about the characters learning about themselves, each other, and the environment they live in. So we kind of expand this frame from the mirror to the friends around them to the city that they're in as a planet, and the planet as a whole. So then we kind of pan back out to this planet with their heads, hearts, and hands. Learners develop skills to drive change. And we wanted to kind of emphasize that this is all kind of with an environmental eye, and kind of planetary well-being was at the heart of kind of a lot of the learning program. So kind of have this fun animation where where the land on the planet kind of comes together to form this heart. Transition out to a classroom, and we transition out again to show kind of a wider community and hopefully a bit of a busier scene, showing lots of people involved in the program before ending on the logo. Storyboards, cool. And then we pull it together into an animatic. So I guess animatics are simply used to check on pacing and the flow, and just making sure the narration doesn't have any quiet spots or really tight spots. I think when we first started doing this a couple of years ago, we weren't using animatics. And what we find is we get to animation and there'd be a 10-second spot where either there was no voiceover happening because we were trying to squeeze in a lot of animation in that area, or that we had 10 seconds of voiceover and about 1 second, 2 seconds of animation happening, and it almost looked boring. So an animatic's a really good way to kind of is a really good way to just piece together some of these static elements and static frames and understand the flow and the pacing as we're moving through. Like I say, there might be areas where we want to add a little bit more animation or take some stuff away. So the artwork, I guess, yeah, didn't have the best feedback with style frames. So initially it was, okay, let's remove the big eyes, and as we're kind of environmentally focused, let's just add a splash of green and a few more neutrals into the palette. So we kind of move away from this kind of spacey alien brand palette, which we're provided with, and move into something that's, yeah, a little bit more chilled out, a little bit more neutrals. We're still trying to pull in that purple as it was such a key element of the brand, but introduce a few more kind of greens into the palette. So this is version 1, which still didn't quite hit the nail on the head. So they wanted to remove the big hands as well. Again, I think this often happens when you come in with big ambitions to be fun and abstract and playful, and sometimes you just got to pull back a little bit, but it's all good. We kind of introduced a few more autumnal colors. So we ended up moving away from the brand palette. In essence, we were kind of rebranding the company as we were going, which wasn't what we were expecting to do, but I guess it was a bit of creative freedom, and if we're helping out a charity in kind of find a color palette that they're happy with in the process, and it's all good. So we ended up in this kind of area, which, to be honest, I think is probably better for them, and feels a little bit more mature, balanced, and less abstract from where we started. So it loads up the whole kind of palette and artwork sequence. Yeah, a lot more chill, a lot less alien-like, a few smaller eyes than we wanted to begin with. But yeah, we were kind of happy with where we ended up, and happy to go through that process with them to kind of find, like I say, a palette that they're more comfortable with. So the sound, also known as, yeah, the bit I think there's always a bit in a project where, well, it's not always. Sometimes there's a bit which you make a slip up or a mistake, and the sound for this was definitely where I fucked up. When a client is recording their own sound, so again, they were looking to save costs. In terms of voiceover and trying to save costs, there's a couple of things we can do. We can find someone from our network to record it. We can jump on Fiverr, which there's actually some really great talent on Fiverr. If you kind of cap it, or you set a minimum fee of, I don't know, 200, 300, you can find some really great people. I think what they wanted to do was use someone internally, so the voice felt authentic, and it was one of their kind of educators who was, yeah, who would be talking through the narration. So when that's the case and a client wants to record it themselves, we often suggest that they hire a Zoom mic. So it just elevates it. It's a little bit, the sound quality is better, there's a bit more bass, and it just makes it sound a lot less tinny. So I recommended that they purchase or hire a Zoom mic, which they did. And when I landed on the Zoom call to kind of run through and to do the recording session with a kind lady who nominated herself, this was the microphone she'd hired. The first thing she said to me was, how do I turn this on? How do I connect it to my computer? I don't have a card reader. I don't know what this does. And yeah, neither did I. So that was a massive, apparently Zoom have more than one mic, so massive oversight on my side. We ended up in the first 10 minutes trying to read through instruction manuals online, and it was chaos. Unfortunately, the hour that we spent recording and kind of directing and making sure that the tone of each line was right, none of it recorded. So they'd spent money hiring this kind of high-end microphone, and yeah, got absolutely nothing for it. So it was a massive fuck up on my part. Luckily, they hired it again. They spoke to the people at the hiring place to understand exactly how to use this. And they kind of did it themselves without us listening in to the session. And luckily it was all good. But yeah, definitely a lesson learned and a bit of a slip up on our side of things. If if a client is recording sound themselves, there's some really easy tips to try and get the best audio quality for an amateur recording. I think just jumping in any room with soft furnishings, and that could be cushions, curtains, whatever. Less stuff for the vocals to kind of bounce off, the better. Build a fort was what there's a guy we worked in a co-working space, and he's kind of a podcaster, and he says if you build a little fort of cushions in front of you, kind of a little U shape, it just again helps cancel that sound. As silly as it might sound, it really helps. Throwing a blanket over yourself, which we suggested that this lady did. And also iPhones, if we're not hiring a Zoom mic, iPhones are fantastic, but you've got to kind of hold them to your face as if you're making a call. They're designed to pick up the sound when the phone is right next to your face. A lot of people kind of start recording, put the phone on the table and read the script, and it doesn't quite have the same kind of sound capture. But yeah, iPhones are fantastic if you're on a budget. Yeah, let's move to the animation. Perhaps, the fun bit. So I think I just wanted to chat through a couple of little bits and a couple of sequences and stuff that we found we had a bit of fun with or challenging to create. So I guess this first kind of opening sequence, we wanted the liquid in the middle to be a bit of a hero character. And the way we did that was creating this 3D bottle in 3D, just so we could get the kind of dimensions as it spun around, and it felt a little bit more, like it existed in this 3D space. Then we animate the water just frame by frame in Animate. This could have been done in Photoshop, Procreate, or any of those bits of software. But again, just kind of eyeballing it and figuring out what worked, and having a bit of fun with that. And taking that into After Effects to comp them both together, and then kind of animate the bottle, kind of animating up, a bit of a dip, and animating up and off the screen again. But kind of fun. I think it's always really good when you kind of mix in software and then figure out it kind of works in the end after kind of work on these separate elements and it all comes together. It's exciting when it works. For the globe, there's a plugin called CC Sphere. It kind of turns that flat image into a sphere, and then you can kind of a couple of keyframes rotate and spin the globe, and it's the easiest kind of built-in effect on After Effects. It's funny, the Cub Studio, which I'm sure you've heard of, have kind of got a really fun little animated influencer. They call him Des Tandankles, but he kind of runs through kind of a few After Effects tips, and it's something they released a couple of months ago. But one of his things was banging on about CC Sphere, and he wasn't wrong. It's a really easy plugin to use to make some really cool effects. And definitely check out that on Cub Studio if you get a sec. And then we've got the two characters on that opening scene of the boy and our girl. For the boy, I think again we're on a budget. I could have kind of mocked this up in Animate and just made sure that this sequence of kind of turning the page worked and felt kind of smooth and great. I kind of eyeballed it, so I just went straight into Illustrator and drew a few frames I thought would kind of work and kind of hoped it would. And it did. A couple of kind of shape animations on the book to give it that sense of depth, kind of animated or tweened the hands, kind of turning over the page. But sometimes it's kind of fun to dive in Illustrator and just kind of hit and hope, especially if you're working on a tight timeline and a budget, and kind of lucky it worked this time. I think for the animation of the girl, there's not so much to play with here. We had a bit of a bounce in the hand, so it was more of the head turn that we wanted to explore. I mean I always bang on about this, but Joysticks and Sliders, it's incredible. I'm sure a lot of people have played with this previously. It means we can kind of animate the head. It works really simple. It's like you kind of pick out what extreme right, or you draw up what the extreme right is, what the extreme left, up and down, and it kind of works to find the middle points and give you some really simple joysticks to animate between. What it means in terms of animation is you can keyframe just two or three elements here, and you get so much. If you were working without joysticks, it might be, 20 different keyframes and 20 different elements you're trying to animate here. So in terms of feedback and tweaking it and exploring a few different speeds and stuff, it just makes life a heck of a lot easier. Yeah, joysticks and sliders, it's like $40, definitely worth your time. The next scene as well, we kind of transition from this set square down to our Greek old worldy columns and building. And then the new world kind of creeps up from behind. And I think this is something we wanted to bring in a bit of reality in terms of the way it crumbles. And we were kind of like, okay, can we bring in a physics engine perhaps to crumble these columns? And we did. Jordan mocked this up in Cinema. So he kind of built the columns, built the roof. There's some really cool tools on Cinema to just slice and dice, almost kind of mosaic chop your object. Then once you've applied kind of physics to that, it almost animates itself, which is great. Then we just kind of worked with cell shaded materials. So sometimes it's called toon shading or cell shading. But it's when we want to make 3D fit into, a 2D scene. Like most famously, I've probably seen this on like Futurama, when they're not going to hand animate like a ship spinning round. So they'll create that in 3D, cell shade it or toon shade it so it fits in with the rest of the 2D work. From this, I think this is probably the most challenging, as simple as it looks, but pan up into the sky and we get a nice bit of cell animation of this character kind of stepping out of a cloud. I think one thing to note is we all kind of learn animation on the job here and illustration. So we're not kind of, finely trained animators. So this for me was kind of pushing my skill set in terms of cell animation to kind of a bit of a new area. I haven't played with this kind of perspective before, or stepping towards a camera. So there was a lot of filming myself and getting references for this, and then sketching it up in Animate really loosely, really kind of figuring out the fewest frames I could do to make this animation feel kind of flowy and not kind of not super choppy. And the tedious bit was redrawing each one of these in Illustrator. So I think this was, for me, the most time-consuming section of the animation. But yeah, really happy with how it turned out. I don't think it's the smoothest thing in the world, but considering the budget and the time we were working to, not bad. Then the characters either side. And again, because we're working to a strict budget, what are the least amount of frames we can kind of throw in here to get them kind of turning to the side and have a bit of that fluid motion. I think on the guy on the left, it's maybe even 5, maybe a 6 frame at the end. Again, the guy on the right, 6 or 7 frames in total. What we also did when we kind of threw them in and comped it in After Effects was add a slight bend effect, just so that it kind of lean to the side, and it just makes it feel a little bit more, adds a little bit of interest to it. There's a plugin called Bendo, which again is like $40. Just a really good warping extension for After Effects. The thing with Bendo is in terms of vector graphics, sometimes when you use a warp on a vector graphic, your strokes can get kind of twisted or warped or stretched, whereas Bendo just works really well with Illustrator and with shape layers to kind of keep everything as you want it while still adding a fluid bend or to your animation. And I think the last thing I'll talk about is match cuts. So I think a lot of time when we're planning out the storyboards, we're trying to make sure that we got fluid transitions between one scene to the next or one shot to the next. I think match cuts is just the easiest way to do it. I'm sure you kind of use these in your work. If you don't, it's just kind of transitioning from one shot to the next and having one bit of movement or content or context that just flows from one shot to the next. So at the top, we've got this kind of world which is rotating at the same angle as then in the next shot, the boy's head kind of carries on that rotation as we flow through. And the diamond below, we kind of have this Pokemon looking anime radial, I guess, as we kind of pan down or scale down to the diamond. And we just match that scaling movement, and it's a really clean cut. We haven't got to do any fancy animation here or transitioning from one bit of artwork to the next. We just match the movement, and it saves us, yeah, a hell of a lot of time. So it's fun when we work. So I'll play through a final animation, and then yeah, let's chat about it.
Sharing learning and wisdom through education is one of humanity's greatest achievements. However, the majority of education systems around the world, many established centuries ago, are struggling to adapt to the speed of change and complexity we are experiencing today. This can leave our young people underprepared to navigate the rapidly changing world they face when leaving school. To address this challenge, we actively collaborate with learners, educators, and thought leaders to understand the skills and capabilities that people need to thrive in the modern world. By drawing on the best existing resources and practices, we create broad and inclusive learning experiences that can be delivered in schools and other settings. In turn, Curriculum for Life supports young people to develop positive relationships with themselves, those around them, the places they live in, and the planet as a whole. With their heads, hearts, and hands, learners develop the skills to drive change and support personal, collective, and planetary well-being. Our online platform enables the Curriculum for Life to be experienced by learners in all settings, free of charge. Discover transformative learning with Curriculum for Life. Sharing learning and wisdom.
Cool. Yeah. So hoping that gets a bit of an insight on the process that we go through and how we kind of, yeah, create explainer videos.